Hi, welcome to a reading of Lanterns on Their Horns, a book about India. Gau is the Sanskrit word for cow. It's also the word for the first ray of light, the eldest child of dawn. The nature of light is to move. That may be how the cow got included in the family of words rooted in the verb gum, for gum means to go. Like its ancestor, the first ray of light, the nature of the cow was to move, and therefore it had to go somewhere. But the somewhere is what it forgot, and in time there grew to be a difference between simply going and going somewhere. Each day the cow went with the herd. In the morning the little creature with 2 feet and soft hands would come to the thatched barn where she lived, open the gate, and take her out to join her companions. She would then move in a cloud of dust to the tinkling of cowbells and the soft clopping of hooves in the dusty village lane. The reassuring sense of sameness was all around her as 2 feet guided the herd into the fallows to graze. There were no untidy stops and starts. She just flowed with the others, the foreknowledge of fresh grass a tickle in her nostrils. When the fields around the village dried and the earth hardened, the herd was forced to go further and further afield to find food. The cows left earlier and returned later, but hunger still wandered through their many compartmented stomachs. They grew thin, and their once tight and glossy skins hung about them like old shawls. But in spite of the long, futile marches, the cow drew comfort from the fact that the day's routine remained roughly the same, and there were always little hands and gentle voices to come back to. But as the sun continued to blaze down from a cloudless sky, the ponds dried up, and even the early morning dew vanished as soon as it touched the ground. The cow's skin began to itch, and it became as brittle as paper. Cracks appeared where insects would feast, creating sores that oozed a smelly liquid that tasted awful when she licked it. Still, the herd went out each day, bound as much by habit as by blood, even though each and every animal knew that the sap in the trees had retreated to their cores and that all that was left on the surface was death. Then the herd began to dwindle. It happened at night, a few at a time. A roaring, smelly thing came, and parts of the herd went away, leaving behind a silence that didn't get filled. Each time it happened, the ones left behind would bellow sadly, and the animals in the truck would reply, their calls going softer as the truck pulled further and further away. The next day, none of the herd would eat for a while. But then hunger would force them to pack their sadness away and concentrate upon the emptiness in their stomachs. And so it went on. The sun watched the earth like a jealous lover, burning away the few clouds that came, and with each rainless week the herd grew smaller. At last there was no herd left, and the cow knew that her turn had come. It knew that her turn had come when they didn't take her out that day to graze. Little hands brought her grain, straw, and some smelly wilted greens in a bucket. That evening the cow had an entire half bucket of water to herself. She waited for the smelly, noisy one to arrive, but it never came. Instead, just before dawn, old 2 Legs appeared with little hands. They fed her more grain and sugar, and the little one clung to the soft folds around her neck, wetting them with something hot that stung a little, but brought welcome relief to her itching skin. So the cow stretched out her tongue and licked the child's face. She tasted salt. She licked it again, eagerly. More came, and she continued licking, growing almost happy. Then old 2 Legs untied her and walked her out of the silent village, little hands still clinging to her neck. At the edge of the village, little hands stayed behind, and it was only her and old 2 Legs. They walked across the dried fields, the empty riverbed, and into the dead forest. They walked for 2 days by the light of the moon, stopping to sleep only when the sun grew too strong to continue. But the cow was happy. They were looking for the herd, and they would find it. On the third day, they found water instead, a tiny green pool, thick with algae and almost undrinkable. But the cow went in gratefully and lay in it, and the soft, cool mud eased the sores on her back and belly. Old Two Legs squatted at the base of a tree and watched. Their eyes met, and the knowledge that there was no herd to join cut through her like a knife. Old Two Legs was the first to look away. He got up and called to her softly. In his hands she smelled something familiar and yet unfamiliar. He asked her to eat it, and because he was all that was left of the herd, she obeyed. The opium did its work well. In its dream, the cow's mouth moved, full of the taste of the sweetest, freshest grass it had ever eaten. Her ears twitched, keeping time with the clop of 4,004 hooves, and her skin felt pleasantly cool, and she was no longer hungry. After 20 hours, she awoke to find that Old Two Legs had gone. For the first time in her life, the cow was utterly alone.